Hello and welcome to English Spark Official. I'm Zayden, joined as always by Alara.
Hey everyone! We're so excited about today's topic.
So, if you ever tried to speak a foreign language, you've probably felt that, deeply frustrating disconnect between your brain and your mouth.
Oh yeah, everybody has.
Right. Like, the vocabulary, you understand the grammar rules perfectly on paper.
Sure.
But the moment you actually open your mouth to order a coffee or, ask for directions, you sound like a walking textbook.
Yeah, completely robotic.
Exactly. The pronunciation is rigid, the rhythm is totally off, and, well, you can literally see the native speaker politely straining to understand you.
It's a painful experience.
It really is. But what if your brain actually already possesses the exact biological blueprint to sound like a native?
That is the million-dollar question.
Right. And what if the traditional language classes you've been taking are like the very things actively shutting that biology down?
I mean, it completely flips the paradigm of how we approach language acquisition, honestly.
It really does.
Because, we traditionally view learning a language as this academic pursuit, like memorizing verb conjugations or parsing sentence structures.
Yeah, treating it like a math equation.
Exactly. Like there's a definitive right or wrong answer. But the strategy notes and content frameworks we're pulling from English Spark Official today, they present a radically different model.
Which is so fascinating.
Yeah, they suggest that achieving a natural human-like accent is not an academic exercise at all. It's actually a biological reflex.
The reflex.
Right, driven by a specific neurological mechanism known as mirror neurons.
And that is exactly the core mission for our deep dive today.
Yep.
We are taking these highly technical, academic frameworks from English Spark Official, which delves really deep into the intersection of neuroscience and language learning, and we are going to distill them.
Break them way down.
Exactly. We are specifically framing this for you, the A2 level language learner.
Because you don't need all the academic jargon.
Right. You are someone who has the basics down. You can survive a simple conversation, but you want to shed that robotic, heavily accented delivery.
You want to sound human.
Yes. So we're going to explore this biological key to natural accents, how your brain actually maps sound, and how to reorganize your learning environment to trigger that natural biology.
It's going to be a fun one. But to understand how to unlock this biological key, we first need to look at what these mirror neurons actually are.
Right. Where did this even come from?
Well, it was actually a sheer accident that led to their discovery.
Wait, really? An accident?
Yeah, back in the 1990s, there was this team of neurophysiologists led by Giacomo Rizzolatti at the University of Parma in Italy.
Okay.
And they were studying the motor cortex of macaque monkeys. So they had electrodes implanted in the monkeys' brains.
Well, okay.
Specifically in the area that controls hand and mouth movements. They were mapping which individual neurons fired when a monkey reached out to grab a peanut.
So they were strictly looking at the motor system, right? Like the actual physical act of movement.
Precisely. It was purely about the brain sending a command to the hand.
Okay, got it.
But during a break in the experiment, a researcher casually reached out and grabbed a peanut themselves.
Just like wanting a snack?
Probably.
Yeah.
And the monkey was completely still, just watching the researcher.
Right.
But the electrodes connected to the monkey's brain suddenly went crazy.
Wait, while the monkey was just sitting there?
Exactly. The exact same neurons that fired when the monkey grabbed the peanut physically were now firing when the monkey simply watched someone else grab it.
That is wild.
Yeah.
So the brain was like internally rehearsing the physical movement without the body ever lifting a finger.
You got it. It was observing a physical action and immediately drafting the exact motor blueprint required to replicate it.
Wow.
And that is the essence of a mirror neuron. The term mirror just means looking at a reflection, right? Copying exactly what is in front of it. And a neuron is just a brain cell. So these are basically copycat brain cells.
Copycat brain cells. I like that.
Yeah.
So if I watch someone smile, my brain's mirror neurons are practically practicing smiling.
Exactly. And over the following decades, researchers mapped this phenomenon in the human brain, too.
Okay, so it's not just monkeys.
No, not at all. We found these vast networks of mirror neurons, not just in the motor cortex, but critically in Broca's area.
Broca's area.
Yeah, that's the region of the brain responsible for speech production and language processing.
Oh, wow. Which means we can apply this Parma monkey experiment directly to the audio processing of human speech.
100%.
So like when I'm sitting on the subway, quietly listening to two native Spanish speakers conversing across from me, my mouth is shut.
Right.
My vocal cords are totally resting, but my Broca's area is lighting up.
It is lighting up like a Christmas tree. Your mirror neurons are actively mapping the precise shape of their lips,
That is so cool.
the placement of their tongue against their teeth, contraction of their vocal cords.
So my brain is secretly, invisibly practicing the physical act of their accent.
Exactly. It's a profound evolutionary adaptation, really. I mean, humans are a highly social species.
Right, we need to fit in.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Our survival historically depended on group cohesion, mimicking behaviors, sharing communication.
That makes total sense.
So these copycat cells evolved to instantly bridge the gap between observing a behavior and performing it.
Okay.
When you hear a specific phone say the rolled R in Spanish or the guttural R in French, your brain doesn't just process it as abstract acoustic data.
It's not just a sound.
Right. Your mirror neurons translate that acoustic data into a 3D physical map for your own mouth.
But, okay, this brings up a massive contradiction for me.
Okay, let's hear it.
If my brain is equipped with this highly advanced automatic mimicking software,
Right.
if my mirror neurons are constantly drawing up 3D maps of the native accents I hear, why is it so agonizingly difficult to actually sound native?
That is the big question.
Like, why do I open my mouth and still sound completely unnatural? It kind of feels like the biology is failing.
Well, the biology isn't failing. The biology is being actively suppressed by the environment you've placed it in.
Suppressed? How?
So the English Spark official frameworks heavily emphasize the concept of cognitive load and the stress response.
Okay.
Mirror neurons require a very specific low-stress neurological environment to function effectively.
Interesting.
When you are thrust into a complex linguistic situation, like, trying to decipher a rapid-fire news broadcast or parse a dense C1 level academic text.
When you only possess A2 level vocabulary.
Exactly. Your brain experiences a phenomenon known as cognitive overload.
Basically, the demand for mental processing power completely exceeds the supply.
Exactly. And when that happens, the brain actually initiates a mild stress response. Cortisol levels rise.
Oh, wow. So you're literally stressed out.
Yeah. The brain perceives confusion and overwhelming complexity as a functional threat.
That makes sense. Sitting in a classroom sweating over a grammar test feels like a threat.
It really does. And in response, blood flow physically shifts. It is diverted away from the auditory processing centers and away from the delicate mimicry networks of the mirror neurons.
Wait, the blood physically moves?
Yes, it shifts to the prefrontal cortex. The brain basically drops the subtle work of mirroring a beautiful accent because it's frantically trying to solve an immediate analytical problem.
Like trying to translate a complex sentence just to figure out what is going on.
Right. It's an amygdala hijack.
An amygdala hijack.
Yeah.
That makes perfect sense. I mean, in a traditional language classroom, you're usually operating in a state of constant low-level cognitive overload.
Oh, constantly.
You are scanning a textbook, trying to remember if a noun is masculine or feminine, trying to, conjugate an irregular verb in the past subjunctive.
Oh, all terrified the teacher's going to call on you next.
Yes. Your executive function is just redlining.
Right.
And in that state of analytical panic, your brain literally cannot allocate resources to the motor cortex to copy the phonetic subtleties of the language.
Exactly. The mirror neurons are powered down.
So it's basically a zero-sum game for the brain's energy.
Pretty much.
If 100% of my neural bandwidth is hijacked by dictionary translation and grammar anxiety, there is 0% left for phonetic mapping.
Spot on. Which explains why reading textbooks creates that robotic language output the sources constantly warn against.
Because a textbook provides zero acoustic or social data for the mirror neurons to copy anyway.
Right. And the analytical stress of reading it shuts down the mimicry system entirely.
Wow. Okay, which is why the frameworks insist on a radical shift in how we structure input for learners.
Especially at the A2 level.
Right, because to keep the mirror neurons online, the input must be highly comprehensible.
Yes. The concept of moving from simple to difficult isn't just about making the student feel comfortable.
It's not just hand-holding.
No, it is a biological necessity to prevent that amygdala hijack.
So the blueprint requires starting with incredibly simple vocabulary. Like words an A2 learner already knows inside and out.
Exactly. Basic verbs, common nouns, everyday adjectives.
Stuff they don't even have to think about.
Right. Because by saturating the input with A2 level vocabulary, the semantic meaning of the sentence is processed almost instantly.
With virtually zero cognitive effort.
Exactly. The prefrontal cortex doesn't have to scramble to translate. The threat level remains at 0.
And because the executive function is relaxed, all of that mental bandwidth is suddenly freed up.
It's liberated.
The blood flow remains steady in the auditory and motor regions.
Yeah.
So the brain essentially stops asking, what does this mean? And finally has the luxury to ask, how does this sound?
That is a perfect way to put it. The listener can finally hear the melody of the language.
Right?
They notice the slight elongation of a vowel or, the way a consonant at the end of one word blends seamlessly into the vowel at the beginning of the next.
And that is the acoustic data the mirror neurons are starving for. But, okay, practically speaking, a learner cannot stay in that A2 vocabulary bubble forever. We do have to expand our lexicon eventually.
Of course, you have to learn new things.
So the sources dictate that any difficult word must be explained naturally within the conversation itself.
Yes, this is crucial.
But how do we do that? How do we introduce complexity without triggering that cognitive overload crash we just talked about?
The key is what they call contextual scaffolding.
Contextual scaffolding, okay.
Let's say an audio lesson introduces a B2 level idiom, something like feeling under the weather.
Okay, good example.
If the audio just drops that idiom into a fast-paced sentence and moves on, the A2 learner's brain crashes.
Because they get stuck wondering why the speaker is suddenly talking about meteorology.
Exactly. The flow is broken, the panic sets in, and the mirror neurons power down.
But if we apply the natural explanation rule, what does that look like?
Well, the speaker might say, I'm feeling a bit under the weather today. I have a headache. I am very tired, and I think I might be getting sick.
Oh, I see.
Notice the architecture of that sentence.
Right. The complex phrase, under the weather, is immediately followed by a cluster of highly familiar A2 level concepts.
Exactly. Headache, very tired, getting sick.
So the brain encounters the unknown idiom, experiences maybe a brief microsecond of confusion.
But before the amygdala can trigger a stress response, the immediate context resolves the confusion.
The translation happens automatically through context.
You got it. And the conversational flow remains completely uninterrupted.
That is brilliant. The learner understands the new phrase through the surrounding simple words, which means their mirror neurons never get kicked offline.
They just keep riding the acoustic wave of the sentence. They absorb the accent and the rhythm while simultaneously acquiring new vocabulary.
It creates a state of flow.
It really does. And once you have established this low-stress, highly comprehensible environment, you can move from passive listening to active neurological training.
Oh, okay. The workout routine.
Exactly. This brings us to the specific methodology outlined in the sources, the mandatory listening and learning features.
Right, which are centered heavily around the shadowing technique.
Yes.
Shadowing. Now, shadowing is a concept that gets thrown around a lot on language learning blogs, but I feel like it's often conflated with parroting.
Oh, constantly. But there is a profound difference between the two, especially when we view them through the lens of motor cortex mapping.
Because parroting is purely semantic, right?
Pretty much.
It's hearing, hello, how are you, and regurgitating the words from memory.
Yeah, and the pronunciation is usually completely flat, filtered entirely through the phonetic rules of the learner's native language.
Because parroting just engages memory recall. It doesn't actually challenge the physical habits of the vocal tract.
Exactly. Shadowing, conversely, is an acoustic and physical exercise.
Okay, so how do we do it right?
Well, it requires you to act as a vocal shadow. You're overlapping your speech with the native speaker or following fractions of a second behind them.
So you aren't just reciting the vocabulary.
No, you are attempting to perfectly replicate the pitch, the speed, the specific intonation curve of a question, even the exact micro pauses between clauses.
It's kind of like learning a partner dance.
Oh, that's a great analogy.
Like practicing shadowing by simply reading words aloud in your room is just memorizing footwork in front of a mirror.
Right.
You know where to put your feet, but you have no rhythm. True shadowing means stepping exactly when the native speaker steps.
Yeah, their momentum.
Adjusting to their subtle shifts in timing. You are forcing your vocal apparatus to conform to the 3D map your mirror neurons just drafted.
That is exactly it. And the frameworks provide a very specific operational sequence to execute this training effectively.
Right, they do.
It begins with a listening focus cue, typically a prompt like, listen carefully.
And that cue acts as a neurological primer, right?
Yeah.
It pulls the brain out of passive background processing and signals the executive networks to pay attention. It primes the auditory cortex for high-resolution capture.
Exactly. You're telling the brain, hey, this is important, record this.
Great. Following the cue is the audio input itself, the native phrase. Then comes the prompt to repeat after me.
Okay.
And then, crucially, the sequence mandates a short pause.
Now, this pause is fascinating to me.
Yeah.
Because it seems completely counterintuitive. I mean, we associate learning with action, with doing. Silence feels like dead air.
It does.
But the sources highlight this short pause as a totally mandatory feature. Is the short pause the secret sauce here?
It absolutely is. In the realm of neuroplasticity, silence is incredibly active.
Active silence.
Yeah. We can conceptualize this short pause as a neurological darkroom.
Ooh, I like that.
When you hear the native phrase, your auditory cortex captures a high-resolution photograph of the sound, but that photograph isn't instantly available to the motor cortex.
It takes time for the film to develop.
Exactly. During those 3 or 4 seconds of silence, the brain is engaging in rapid synaptic consolidation.
So the mirror neurons are replaying that acoustic file. Yes. Analyzing the specific frequencies and rhythms and translating that data into a sequence of motor commands.
The brain is basically calculating exactly how much tension to put on the vocal cords.
Right.
Exactly where to place the tip of the tongue against the alveolar ridge.
Exactly. And if you force the learner to speak instantly, without that pause, you completely bypass that calculation phase.
Oh, I see.
They will inevitably fall back on the deeply ingrained automatic phonetic habits of their native language.
They will use their English tongue placement to try and make a Spanish sound.
Right, which never works.
Mm-hmm.
The pause provides the critical window for the brain to suppress the native language habits and construct the new foreign motor sequence.
Okay, so when the pause ends and the learner finally opens their mouth to repeat the phrase, they're executing a newly formed biological blueprint.
Yes, and the first few times they do it, let's be honest, it feels physically awkward.
Oh yeah, the tongue feels thick, the jaw feels tight.
The muscles of the face are literally being forced to move in unprecedented ways.
Which is exactly why the sources insist on the repetition of key phrases, right?
You have to. A single neural firing does not create a lasting pathway.
Neuroplasticity requires repetition to physically thicken the myelin sheath around the axons,
making the new signal faster and more automatic.
You are taking a conscious, highly deliberate, kind of awkward physical movement and hammering it until it becomes a subconscious reflex.
That's the entire goal. But, practicing these reflexes in the isolation of an audio drill only takes you so far.
Right.
The English Spark official frameworks are very explicit about the next phase.
Taking it to the streets. Real-life application and conversational flow.
Exactly.
They state that the material must include interruptions, reactions, agreement, and light humor.
Which is so important.
But honestly, this seems almost hostile to an A2 learner.
How so?
Well, why throw messy, unpredictable conversational chaos at someone who is just trying to master basic pronunciation?
Yeah.
It seems like it would just cause that overload again.
That's a fair point. But because language is fundamentally a social instrument, and mirror neurons are inherently social engines, you have to do it.
Social engines.
Right. They evolved to facilitate connection and empathy between humans. If you isolate an A2 learner in a sterile environment of perfectly enunciated, uninterrupted audio drills, you are starving those social engines.
You are training the brain to give a speech, not to have a conversation.
Exactly. A clean textbook dialogue where person A speaks for 30 seconds, pauses perfectly, and then person B speaks for 30 seconds. This just doesn't exist in reality.
No, real human interaction is totally chaotic. We talk over each other.
We use filler words.
We grunt in agreement while the other person is still speaking.
Right. And those messy elements, the filler words, the interjections, the overlapping speech, those are actually the hardest parts of an accent to master.
I can see that.
Think about a non-native English speaker who has perfect grammar and excellent pronunciation, but when they pause to think, they use a sound from their native language.
Oh, like they use a hard A instead of an O, or lean.
Yes. Instantly, the illusion of the native accent is broken.
Because filler words are entirely subconscious. You don't consciously think about saying, oh.
No, it is a pure unthinking reflex.
Yeah, and you cannot learn a subconscious reflex from a flashcard or a grammar table.
Impossible.
The only way to acquire those specific culturally bound social markers is through the mirror neuron system, by observing them in a highly dynamic, socially engaged context.
Exactly. And that is why the frameworks warn against long monologues.
Oh, right.
When an A2 learner listens to a 5-minute uninterrupted monologue, Their brain recognizes that no social reaction is required.
There's no conversational give and take.
Right. The brain slips from active social engagement into a passive monitoring state.
Because there's nothing to interact with.
Exactly. The mirror neurons, sensing no immediate need to mimic or bond, begin to just idle.
But when the audio includes light humor or a sudden interruption or an immediate reaction like, oh, absolutely,
The social brain remains hypervigilant. It is constantly hunting for social cues to mirror.
so when the learner hears a native speaker laugh at a light joke, their mirror neurons aren't just processing the vocabulary of the punchline.
No, they are absorbing the cadence of the humor, the specific tonal shift of the laugh, the cultural timing of the interaction.
You are biologically absorbing the culture's specific way of expressing agreement, joy, or hesitation.
Yes. By forcing the A2 learner to practice shadowing within these realistic, messy conversational rhythms, you are building the neurological infrastructure to handle real-world spontaneous interactions.
So when they eventually go to a coffee shop and the barista casually interrupts them with, "For here to go,"
Their brain won't trigger an amygdala hijack.
their mirror neurons will just recognize the social rhythm and seamlessly supply the mapped response.
Exactly. It completely reframes the entire journey of language learning.
It really does. I mean, we started by looking at the frustration of sounding like a textbook.
Yeah,
And we've uncovered that the solution isn't to double down on academic rigor.
not at all.
The solution is to lean into the biology of the brain's natural copycats, the mirror neurons.
It requires acknowledging that cognitive load is the enemy of phonetic acquisition.
We have to ruthlessly protect the brain from system overload by utilizing simple A2-level vocabulary.
And ensuring any complex terms are naturally contextualized.
Right. This keeps the stress low and the mirror neurons active.
And once we have that low-stress environment, we leverage active training.
We move past passive listening and semantic parroting.
And we use true acoustic shadowing.
We utilize the listening cue to prime the brain. We capture the high-resolution audio. And we respect the crucial silence of the short pause.
That neurological darkroom where the motor cortex drafts the physical blueprint of the new accent.
Exactly. And finally, we must ensure that the material we use reflects the dynamic, messy reality of human interaction.
Because the mirror neurons are social tools. They need the interruptions, the humor, and the agreements to fully map the subconscious reflexes of the language.
If there's one thing you take away from this deep dive today, let it be this. Struggling with a foreign accent is not a reflection of your intelligence.
Not at all.
It doesn't mean you lack some elusive ear for languages.
Right.
It simply means you have been trapped in an academic environment that actively suppresses your brain's natural ability to mimic.
You possess the biological machinery right now.
You just need to change the input to turn the key.
It really removes the paralyzing pressure of perfection, doesn't it?
It does. You aren't trying to solve a mathematical equation. You are just giving your biology the right environment to adapt.
Well said.
But, we've spent this time exploring how aggressively your mirror neurons work to map and mimic the accents, rhythms, and tones of the foreign languages you actively study.
Yeah.
They are a profoundly powerful, always-on system for internalizing the audio environment around you.
They never turn off.
Right. But that raises a fascinating and honestly somewhat unsettling question.
Oh, what's that?
If your brain is biologically hardwired to subconsciously mimic the tone, the rhythm, and the attitude of the voices it hears the most,
Okay.
what else are your mirror neurons silently copying from the people you surround yourself with every single day?
Oh, wow. Yeah. That is a question that extends far beyond the realm of language acquisition.
Think about it. Until next time, keep diving deep.